started working at Highway last March. Tricia retired. Executive
Here, why don't you come in tighter so you're not behind the board? There we go.
Sorry, do you want me in this?
No, I want you over there versus over there. I'm sorry, Vic.
Why am I standing next to nobody? Okay. You guys trying to tell me something? What's happening here?
It's all good.
I mean, to my right. I didn't mean to my left. Okay.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Adrienne Esposito. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment. Thank you for coming to our New York State Clean Water Rally and Press Conference. Clean water is a necessity. It is not a luxury item. And we're here today to ask for the restoration of the clean water funding in the New York State budget. Clean water is a right for every New Yorker, and we can't do it without appropriate funding. We brought together today a unique coalition of wastewater treatment advocates, wastewater treatment operators, drinking water suppliers, and clean water advocates from one part of the state to another. We literally are covering every constituency. The issue here today is about safe, clean, affordable drinking water for all New Yorkers. This is a time for us not to turn off the tap to clean water. We don't want a drip, drip, drip of clean water funding. We need a flow of funding to address our clean water needs. Everything from treating for emerging contaminants to replacing lead pipes, replacing old and failing septic systems, upgrading the infrastructure that's crumbling and antiquated, causing sewage to go into our rivers and streams and lakes and estuaries. This is a necessity. So we're here to ask the Senate and Assembly members to put it in their budget and to persuade the governor for full funding of $600 million for clean water needs in New York State. We've made a lot of progress over the last several years. New York State has spent money on clean water, and it's showing. But now is not the time to shut the faucet off. We're here today, and we're joined by a wonderful clean water advocate who's actually in the Senate. We're here today with the Senate Environmental Conservation Chair, Senator Pete Harckham, who'll be speaking.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adrienne. Thank you for your leadership, for assembling the coalition here today. I want to thank all of you for being here. We heard a lot about faucets and flow and drip. I was trying to think of a flush analogy, but I didn't want to go there.
Don't flush our future.
There we go. Don't flush our future. There we go. All right. Thank you so much for being here. This is an incredibly serious issue. As Adrienne said, nothing is more important than drinking water. Nothing is more fundamental to our role in government, local, county, or state, or federal, than to ensure our residents have clean, potable, cost-effective drinking water. And we have made progress. There was a 5-year agreement of $500 million. Now, $500 million, we all know, was not enough. I could spend $500 million in my district tomorrow on these kinds of projects, but it was predictable. It was bankable. Our municipalities could count on it. And to cut it in half for 2 years in a row is mind-boggling. We are all scratching our heads, like, why this cut? Why now? This is one of the most successful programs that we have in New York State. There's broad bipartisan support for this. There is broad support from local governments, from county government, state government. Why are we insisting on this cut now? Now is not the time. Let's back up and look macro for a little bit. Many parts of the nation are literally drying up. They are literally drying up. They cannot supply enough drinking water for their residents, for their businesses, for agriculture. One of the things that will be New York's competitive advantage going into the future is our abundance of clean, fresh, potable drinking water. This is an economic opportunity, but unless we protect that resource, it is so much more cost-effective to protect our resources than to then have to remediate. But we do know there are issues now, and the better the science get, the more we discover. Lead, PFAS, there are a whole other list of contaminants that I'm sure many of the activists here today will mention to you. Now is not the time to be cutting funding. I said this is an economic issue, it's an environmental issue, it's a public health issue, and it's an environmental justice issue. Who lives in the communities where they haven't had the resources to invest in their clean water infrastructure? Mostly are black and brown communities. So this is most definitely an environmental justice issue. Why are we cutting this funding now? This is a cut that will not stand. We are determined. You know, there are a lot of times in the budget we go back and forth and we'll compromise on certain things. This is not an issue we can compromise on. Not only do we want $500 million, we want $600 million. So I am so grateful for all of the partners who are here, our partners in the Assembly and in the Senate, but certainly all of the advocates who are here today. And Adrian, thank you again for bringing us all together.
Senator.
Thank you.
And what about the people who supply us clean drinking water? Well, they're here today. We have the executive director of the New York State American Water Works Association, Jenny Ingrader. Jenny.
Thank you. My name's Jenny Ingrader. I'm the executive director for the New York Section American Water Works Association. Thank you to all of our elected officials for being here today. Thank you, Adrian and CCE, for having me as well. The partnership in fighting for clean water throughout the state and bringing the needs for water suppliers to the forefront of the conversation is crucial. The need for investment in water systems statewide cannot be understated. As time goes on, our assets get older and are in need of continuous upgrades and replacements. Science and technology advances in water testing abilities has accelerated rapidly. We know more about our water now than ever before. This has all led to New York State being a leader in water quality regulations. As a water provider, new regulations mean spending millions for needed investments to upgrade our distribution systems and treatment facilities. We wish that building a new treatment system were as simple as flipping a switch, but it isn't. It takes design, securing funding, construction, testing, and an intense approval process throughout all of this. It takes a lot of time to bring these systems from an idea to a reality. Today, we join our partners in requesting that monies allocated for Clean Water Fund be restored and increased to $600 million. With our needs growing and regulations continuing to be made, the need for funding in our industry is never going to stop. Water is one of the most important pillars in our society, and without funding and the support of our representatives in the state, we run the risk of water becoming simply unaffordable for many, and we cannot let that happen. We call on representatives in the state to ensure treatment systems continue to get built and water continues to remain affordable by effectively funding these ever-important investments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. We also are delighted today to be joined by Assemblywoman Solages from Long Island. And if anybody knows about drinking water quality, filtration needs, upgrading sewer infrastructure needs, it's the folks on Long Island. Assemblywoman.
Thank you. Thank everyone. I thank the coalition here for taking the time and effort to really talk about an issue that's so important. You are a pro. I just want to say you are really an advocate for Long Island, so I want to first thank you and thank all the coalition members, because everyone should have access to affordable water. And when we talk about a budget, you know, a multi-billion-dollar budget, The last thing that we should be doing as a society, as a state, as an entity, is cutting money for clean water infrastructure. And so this is a cut that needs to be immediately reversed, and then we also should show good faith by increasing the amount. And speaking as a Long Islander, I try to say that normal, right? But speaking as someone from Long Island, it's essential. It's really a lifeline that we have adequate clean water. And so we're sitting here, on a barrier island. We are at the brunt of the climate crisis. We are at the brunt of the clean water fight. And so we plead from Long Island, please do not do this now. We've made many strides in making sure that people have access to infrastructure, have access to clean drinking water, protecting our aquifer. This is not what we should be doing as a state. So I know in the state assembly, we're going to be pushing back against these cuts and making sure that we add more money. And especially, as someone who is chair of the Black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Asian Caucus, from an individual that represents disadvantaged communities, we've always been at the brunt of the climate crisis. We've always been disadvantaged when it comes to the polluters and other entities. And so really from communities, Black and brown communities, we say, please do not do this moving forward. This is not a smart budget maneuver. This is not a smart, way to balance the budget. This is really just, simply, wrong. I was going to say another word, but, this is PG-13 here. Yeah. So just again, thank you for the coalition, and we're ready and prepared to fight for clean drinking water. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to hear from another clean water advocate who also does a great job advocating for all the various needs for clean water. We're going to hear from Rob Hayes from Environmental Advocates. Rob?
Thanks so much, Adrian. Thanks for facilitating this amazing event. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rob Hayes. I'm the Director of Clean Water with Environmental Advocates New York. You've heard today how the state has made a historic investment in clean water since 2017. $5 billion has been put into this program, more than any other state in the nation is doing right now. And you might be wondering, what has the state been doing with that $5 billion? Where has it gone? What projects has it funded? Well, today, finally, we know the answer. As part of today's Clean Water Day of Action, Environmental Advocates has published a new report, for the first time presenting a comprehensive analysis of how the state has spent Clean Water Infrastructure Act funds over the last 7 years. And there's a couple of key takeaways from this report. Number one, the Clean Water Infrastructure Act has been phenomenally successful. It has put out over $3.4 billion, funding 2,100 projects in literally every county of this state. And a majority of that funding has benefited environmental justice communities. And we're just getting started with that kind of success to date, because every single year there have been shovel-ready projects submitted for funding for Clean Water Infrastructure Act programs, but those projects didn't get the funding that they needed because there wasn't enough money to go around. Now that tells me we need to increase clean water funding, not decrease it. We're already not getting communities the resources that they need to protect clean water for their communities. That has to change, and we can change it in this budget by not cutting clean water funding, but instead by investing $600 million in the Clean Water Infrastructure Act. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to Adrian.
So here we have a great New York State program that we know has been successful, and we want the state to build on that success, not block the success by cutting the budget in half. And what about those who treat our wastewater? What do they have to say about all this? Well, coincidentally, we have with us today the executive director of the New York Water and Environment Association, who is in charge of all of the wastewater treatment operators in New York State, Chris Dotson.
Thanks, Adrian, for making me sound a lot cooler than I really am. But yes, the New York Water and Environment Association does represent all publicly owned treatment works, wastewater utilities across New York State. And our members are really concerned about the future of where our utilities are going in the face of things like climate change. A dollar spent today saves us $4 in the future when you're looking at making our our utilities more resilient in the face of climate change. Doing simple things like taking pipes and power supplies off of the ground level and raise them up so when we get flooding along the Hudson River, Long Island, Binghamton, Susquehanna River, all these other places, those things are protected. Those pumps will keep pumping, the power will stay on, and you will be able to flush your toilet. And same on the drinking water side of things, where you keep those pumps going, you keep the power on, you can turn on your faucet. It takes a lot of public education. That's what we've been doing here today and yesterday, going around talking to folks about the value of water. Water's life, we know that. How cranky do people get when the water doesn't work anymore? But doing that same public education at home to let people know that the drinking water that comes out of their tap is very good, and it's a lot cheaper than going to the store and buying it by the gallon or by the bottle. Same thing with paying for stormwater management, so that when we do have more intense rain events, mostly due to climate change, we've got better facilities to take care of and treat that water so that our streets aren't flooded, our basements aren't flooded, and people can still flush their toilets. Because if the ground is flooded, the water won't go down. So I'll wrap up by just echoing what all of our coalition members have said, which is that we need to continue to keep our foot on the gas, the faucet open, whatever metaphor you want to use on funding New York's water. Water infrastructure, water and wastewater infrastructure is economic development. The more a community floods, the more that the water fails or is polluted, the less investment from the private sector in that community will take place, and that community will continue to suffer. So when we invest in our public infrastructure, we're also investing in our private infrastructure, our homes and our businesses in all of our communities. So I'd also just like to underscore what Adrian said. This coalition is broad and growing. And so it's hard to say no to an investment in water, period. But when you've got so many different people with different viewpoints all asking for the same thing, then please fund it at $600 million. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Steve Otis just got here.
So we're also joined today by Assemblyman Steve Otis, who's also been another water warrior in the New York State Assembly. And I want to tell you this. All of what you've heard today is about clean water is not a luxury item that needs to be dispensed with during difficult economic times. Clean water is a necessity that needs to be funded in good budget times and in bad budget times. Would you want to say a few words? And I'm going to give the last word to Assemblyman Steve Otis.
Behind me are advocates from all over the state who have done something that is not just a New York State thing, done something that is a national thing. Because going back into 2014, 15, these individuals and the organizations they represent said New York needs to come up with better clean water programs, and we did. And so today, New York State has the best, most robust clean water programs of all the states. And so in this budget, we want to make sure we're continuing to live up to that commitment, continuing to live up to meeting the health needs and the water quality needs of the residents of this state. And we will do it because we're at the top, we're not moving down, we're moving up. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions before we wrap up and go to our advocacy meetings? Marie? Drinking water standards from the EPA, how will that impact?
So the new the new EPA MCLs that are going to lower that MCL on PFAS, New York State Department of Health, and you can check with them, they estimate there's going to be 300 additional water supplies in New York State that are not going to be able to meet those regulations and are going to have to build expensive treatment in the neighborhood of $2 to $10 million per treatment site. So that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, the only good news about PFAS chemicals is that you can treat it with the activated granulated carbon systems, but they cost money. They not only cost money to purchase, but then they cost money to maintain over the life of the system. So it really is an expensive endeavor. It's important, and that's one of the other reasons why we're advocating for this funding. As you may know, New York State currently has a drinking water standard of 10 parts per trillion. EPA is recommending, and we believe they're going to settle upon a new drinking water standard of 4 parts per trillion. That's a considerable amount, and as was said, millions of people will get cleaner water with that number, but it's going to cost millions of dollars to implement. Okay, well, you go first. And then
Just very quickly, there shouldn't be money that has not gotten out the door. That is one of the huge frustrations among communities, municipalities, the system providers, and environmental advocates is why do we have so much money that is still stuck in the pipeline or clogged in the system, to use another metaphor. Don't quote me on that. But that money should not be still stuck in the system. That money should be out in the street, and that is an enormous frustration in the community.
And I would add also that that is a fairly frustrating comment, because currently right now, 1/3 of all applications that go into the Water Infrastructure and Improvement Act are not funded because of lack of funds. If we have this budget, that would mean 2/3 of all projects that request funds will be denied. So saying we have money we haven't spent yet doesn't see the bigger picture of the crumbling infrastructure and the strong need by wastewater treatment operators and drinking water suppliers clamoring for help and assistance.
And Adrian, I might wait one more point. Yeah. And to reinforce what Adrian was saying, one of the stats that we cite in this report is that just last year alone, in 2023, the WIA program, the state's main water infrastructure grant program, could have put out an additional $500 million to shovel-ready projects that year. All of those projects did not receive a grant award. So I know the state has estimated, and our report estimates, there's about $1 billion not yet utilized by the Clean Water Infrastructure Act. The governor could have cut that in half just last year alone. And we are confident that if they had fully utilized this funding over the last 7 years, there wouldn't be any funding left over.
I mean, look, if you don't pay a heating bill for 6 months and you say, I have money in the bank, why should I go get a job? The bill for our infrastructure is growing. Other questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick follow-up.
See what you did, Murray? Look what happened.
When these new MCLs come down, and we fully expect, as Adrian said, they will, water suppliers will bill this treatment, with or without money, and that means the rates are going to go up, and that brings environmental justice and affordability issues. We really need this money to help offset that, to make it affordable.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because our goal here is not only to have clean water, but also to have affordable water. We are in New York. We want people to open up their faucets and know that there aren't cancer-causing chemicals in it, and we also want them to be able to afford their water bill. Those are two critical needs.